Welcome to Hypers Conversations. My name is Suresh Kochatal. The COVID-19 has had an impact on the entire economy across the world. Nations are struggling to retain a semblance of balance. More importantly, in a country like India, where a majority of the organized sector is only a small percentage, the economy is playing havoc. To discuss this all and more, we have with us Mr. Pawan Kumar, who is a corporate lawyer specializing in the fields of healthcare, real estate, among others. Especially, I need to quiz him today on the medium, small enterprises because that's where the entire problem is happening. Welcome to the show, Mr. Pawan.
Thank you, Mr. Suresh.
So, at the outset, let me ask you this one very, very basic question which I seem to be asking everywhere. What, according to you, is the impact of COVID-19 on the Indian economy? And of course, then we'll get down to the micro, small and medium enterprises. But at the Indian economy, once the lockdown is lifted, what happens from there on?
So, to be very honest, your guess is as good as mine. And this is a situation that everybody's grappling with. So, yeah, there are a lot of doomsday theories going around. There is a lot of optimism in terms of how the offtake is going to take place once the worst is already done. But having said that, yes, I think the government is really working very well towards supporting in the best manner possible. Some timely, some maybe will come in due course. For the economy, as I see, it's not the end of the world. There is obviously optimism and that things are going to get better, but this is a complete reset. A reset of sorts that the world hasn't witnessed, and well, a lot of changes are going to happen in terms of business dynamics and opportunities, and we should look forward to. I think these are, I would rather put it as exciting times to look forward to rather than being very pessimistic in terms of what's going to happen.
As a founding member of the law chambers and being in this legal practice for quite some time now, how do you read the various facets that are going to strike at the MSME sector especially? Now let's go one by one. One is regarding the government's insistence that you need to pay salaries to your employees. And the irony of it is that the government itself is cutting down on the salaries of its employees. Look at a state like Kerala, where they're saying we're going to cut an entire month's salary in 5 installments. Or even in Telangana and various other states where they're cutting down on the salary of some other employees who are not in the forefront of this fight against COVID. So how do you read that? I mean, what is the legal point? How much can the government really insist that we should pay salary, the private sector should pay salaries?
So I think the answer is very clear. I think it stems from the Constitution, and it's the right of the state and the responsibility of the state to take care of the people. As far as they were looking in terms of the migrant labor and the employees and everybody else, the state is doing a good job in terms of providing for what they should. But when it comes to the MSME sector especially and other companies, there seems to be a lot of support, especially fiscal and financial, that is yet to be given. And more so, I think we need to understand this from the fact that we're moving towards a regime of insolvency. And I say this because the signs and the signals are very, very clear. If you examine any law, what the law tries to do is it tries to tell you that what is right and what is wrong. For the first time, you will see that the government is actually amending the law to prevent companies from going into insolvency or to increase the threshold so that the companies don't go into insolvency. Now, what does it signify? It signifies that the government is obviously anticipating that a lot of companies are going to have a very big financial impact. Understanding that they're already going to be under financial stress, to impose upon them additional burden like to mandatory payment of salaries or any other such measures in terms of taking mandatory medical insurance when the lockdown is over. All of these may not really be in the financial best interest of companies and enterprises, especially the MSME. Now, if you look at the Telangana government, they've kind of come up with the deferment of salary. So has the Kerala government. But just yesterday, the Kerala High Court has said that this deferment of salaries cannot as a concept be undertaken by the government, especially when the services are being provided. So we're going to kind of watch a very new jurisprudence that's going to be created in terms of whether it's going to be permissible or not. But clearly the signs are very evident that you cannot already burden the sector which is already being under financial stress.
What happens to that famous clause which is often mentioned of force majeure, like, a lot of people are quoting that left, right and center, be it in terms of paying the rent or even paying the electricity charges in terms of the fixed charges or anything under the sun. They're saying, look, this is an act of God. and really can't define. It's not an earthquake, it's not a flood, but how do you define the entire thing?
An act of God, and rightly said, well, time will tell us if this is an act of God or this is an act of another nation or circumstance as well. I don't want to point fingers at anyone. But having said that, an act of God is something that's beyond the human control. And yes, definitely what is happening right now is an act of God. It's a complete reset of the nature and things are going back to where it should be. I think it's taken the human civilization back into the cave days where we're confined to our homes. But having said that, the legal impact of this is going to be very different, and it's going to differ from contract to contract. Now, what a force majeure basically says in the context of commercial contracts is different from what it means in terms of leasing and real estate. These are two independent legislations, one dealing with transfer of property, the other dealing with the Indian Contract Act. Now, under the transfer of property, the word used is destruction or damage, whereas in terms of the contract, it talks about impossibility of performance. Today, we are at a stage where there is a temporary lockdown. Now, whether the temporary lockdown has resulted in these contracts to permanently be declared to be impossible, or has the temporary lockdown resulted in the damage of a business or the economy of the building, these are going to be factually determined on the basis of the clauses in the contracts. The way I would see it, however, is some of the contracts would definitely be affected by the force majeure and they will not be able to be performed, while the others, they can still be performed.
And specifically, Mr. Pawan, I want to bring you to this point because a lot of talk in the market today. Many retailers within a mall, because they are the ones who are most impacted. Even now, I don't think in the post-lockdown scenario, the malls will be possibly the last thing that will open up. So in such a scenario, if a retailer within a mall refuses to make a payment based on a clause that he had drawn up in the contract, what legal options does he have?
Sure. So a force majeure is a creature of the contract. Now, if there is a clause in the contract which provides for the benefit of a force majeure, now typically a force majeure would say that any act beyond the man control can be taken as a reason for not to perform the obligations. Now, payment of rent is an obligation of a tenant, and therefore, if by virtue of the lockdown, his contract provides for this, he need not pay. But you would see that a lot of contracts may not provide for this clause, in which case their options are very limited. They really will not be able to fall back on the benefit of this unless, of course, the courts or the government come up with something which kind of stipulate that this is an event across the stretch and length and breadth of the situation today, and therefore they should. But as things stand, we are faced with this question day in and day out. And unless you review the contract and see what the impact is, I guess there is no way out for tenants from not paying the obligations.
So when you're advising a real estate client of yours, and when you're telling him, and when he's built up a residential complex, for example, and he finds that he doesn't have the laborers, the migrants have all disappeared post-lockdown, he has a cash crunch. Now, in such a scenario with RERA in place and other laws, how does a real estate developer work in a post-COVID scenario when there's surely going to be a cash crunch? People are going to defer their payments of EMIs to the banks also at the same time. There are going to be a whole lot of issues, isn't it? How are you going to advise your clients?
So it's very tricky, Mr. Suresh, because fundamentally, if you see what Mr. Nitin Gadkari had mentioned yesterday, or I think it came in the papers today, he said that just like any other company, the companies must come together, have their own fund of fund. They must try to kind of liquidate their existing inventory at a cost model, but not a profit model and everything else. Easier said than done, because you're talking about profitable businesses or companies who take up these ventures for commerce and not for charity. Now, having said that, yes, what the Maharashtra RERA has done, it has extended the duration of the completion of the project, so thereby making it less onerous on the builders. Because RERA, as you know, comes with penal consequences of arrest and everything else. But that itself is not sufficient. Here the question is a complete reset of the time. Now, you could potentially say that the period during which the COVID lockdown has happened can be the reset, but the period even before and thereafter have to be taken into account. The migrant labor must come back to the city. You need to be in a position where you're able to function. The steel, cement and everything else has to be operational. The transportation has to be permitting for it to come to the location. More than that, you need to have people with jobs who are able to afford to buy the inventory. Now, who are you going to construct all of these for? Now, there could be many cases where you've launched a project and everything is available except the people who are willing to purchase. Now, what are you going to do? So there are these. So merely providing a stimulus of financial aid is not sufficient because nobody builds to retain. Unless you're a builder who's building for the purpose of retaining for leasing and real estate otherwise. But if you're building to sell, I think the situation is going to be a little watchful as you go forward after the COVID.
So which sector, according to you, I'm just taking a dipstick survey, I did this before also, asking you whether which sector will actually take a maximum impact and which sectors do you think will actually boom in the, I mean, this is beyond your capacity as a lawyer. I'm asking you more from a business perspective.
So from what I see right now from the various sectors of clientele that we kind of advise in, anybody in the online and whether it's education or pharmacy or medicine or anything else, deliveries and all of that stuff. So they're going to do really well. But anybody in the more brick and mortar kind of an industry, which is you talk about the real estate, especially in terms of construction, not about anything else, or you talk in terms of retailing, in terms of malls, multiplexes, theaters, entertainment, and not the digital media entertainment, they're going to have a bit of a lag in terms of being able to come back. There is going to be a lot of destructive technology and changes that is going to be made. A lot of newer opportunities are going to come up and things have to be evolved and developed. Very simply put, I thought the legal profession was one that could be really hit by this. But the courts have been very quick to adopt the video conferencing.
That's something that I want to really ask you because how are you going to change in that kind of scenario?
Correct. So we're already working through the video conferencing mechanism. So what's happening right now is that the high courts and the Supreme Courts, we sit in our comfort of our homes and then we are able to present our cases before the courts. The judges are available, the advocates are there. But then again, this is applicable only to a percentage of the whole legal profession. The president of the Bar Council has written letters to the Chief Justice of India saying that not everybody can adapt or adopt into this technology, and therefore once COVID is done and dusted, we should come back into the court atmosphere and stuff. But yes, like I said, so there is going to be a bit of a disruption, there is going to be a bit of a hesitation, but I think everything is for the good. I see a lot of technology adoption that's happening and across the levels.
Well, it comes back to the medium and small enterprises. One of the grouses they had was that, or one of the demands that they had was that in the post-lockdown scenario, they wanted a deferment of the GST for a few months.
Right.
Now, GST is today the lifeline for not just the union government because a major part of it devolves onto the states. I think more than 49% goes back to the states. If the central government says, okay, fine, we're going to give you a 3-month moratorium, or just like what they did with the EMIs and the loans, you don't pay GST for 3 months or you pay a certain percentage of GST, is it not going to play havoc with the entire economy?
No, I'm sure, but then I'm a little lost because deferment of GST will happen when there is economy and there's business, when there's commerce. Today in the lockdown scenario, where is the commerce and business happening to start with? So I think what needs to be seen is in terms of how the RBI moratorium for repayment of bank loans has been given, which again, as you're all aware, the banks haven't really taken, only a 50% or even less has been adopted. The question is that you need to not just look in terms of a deferment, but in terms of a much more concrete fiscal enhancement. Something to say that you need the working capital right now. Unless you have the working capital, you can't source your raw material. Unless you have the raw material, you can't manufacture your goods. Unless the goods are available, you can't kind of market and sell the product. And therefore, then comes the question of GST. What you need is for the government to give you a mandatory quantum of money and say that this money will be utilized irrespective and is available for you, no questions asked. Maybe the government should kind of stand guarantor as to the banks for this money. You can't simply say that here is the RBI giving money to the bank and the bank will lend to the customer. Because the banks aren't doing that because they have their own NPS to look after, and rightly so.
So what happens when banks don't lend, and then we're going to have a slew of NPS coming up? They're going to have a lot of companies going bankrupt. I mean, we already saw that happening in the pre-COVID era. I think these things only make it worse. I mean, it's good for a lawyer's business, but when you look at from a perspective of an industry, I mean, the medium and small enterprise, even the micro, are the lifelines of Indian economy today. The government today talked of a huge cash infusion happening just after the lockdown is happening, which is good news. But do you see in a law of the jungle where only the fittest survive, there is going to be, say, a 20 to 30% definite bankruptcy that's going to happen?
Visibly, evidently visible, and not because of anything else, but because the entrepreneur's business model doesn't justify a post-COVID functioning. A lot of my clients who have very simply said that I'm going to kind of shut down my operations and restart with a different business model. So you can't blame it on anything except the circumstances. And as you all know, 8 out of 10 startups always fail. only to kind of make it big and they kind of get into the league. So similarly, a lot of strategic collaborations is going to be the key right now. Not everybody can look at doing everything by themselves. So in a post-COVID scenario, more than just capital infusion, it's in terms of cost cutting and strategic synergies that everybody has to look forward to. Those who can do that are the ones who will kind of definitely survive and scale faster. And those who are still going to be very organic and dependent on their own internal accruals and finances may find a bit of a difficulty, and it will take some time for them to come out of this.
So my last question, and that's the most crucial one, is as a lawyer, as a corporate lawyer, how do you advise your clients in the post-COVID scenario? One is to be careful with their enterprises in terms of the cash, how to deal with issues like ESI, for example, where you're going to say that these are the available resources for you. So any employee who is drawing, say, below 15,000, am I right, who can get access to half the salary coming from the ESI, the owner needs to pay the half. So maybe 3 months or 6 months from now, that still continues like that. What will be your advice as a legal professional to your clients, especially the medium and small enterprises?
So fundamentally, our advice has been that retaining human resources is the key to any business. Talk to your employees and see how you can provide for their sustenance. Retain them because they know your operations and they know your business. Merely because you have a financial difficulty to let go is the easiest thing to do. Well, this could sound very humanitarian and otherwise, but the fact is there are ways and means in which you could continue to retain them and only because of them scale and operate and grow your business. There are large companies with 1,500 plus employees who are trying to kind of hive off employees because they're kind of reworking on their businesses. But MSME sector is not one of those. They work in a smaller number of niche specialist workforce and everybody else. Do not lose them because getting somebody back and then being able to scale is going to be difficult. Try working out a model where they're still happy to kind of be with you. And as far as finances are concerned, definitely the government is going to provide the stimulus. It's only a question of time. I know that we're all very anxious and we're awaiting what's going to happen, but I don't really think the government is going to orphan us. You just have to have the faith in them and they will definitely do what's best for all of us.
So, Mr. Pawan, as we close this conversation, how is the legal profession looking up? Did you face, are you also facing a post-COVID scenario?
Oh yes, we're facing a fantastic post-COVID scenario. Lawyers, as you're aware, we get only like the school children, we get a summer vacation, but now we have a very extended vacation. We're all sitting at home, spending time with our families. We have time to talk to our friends, a lot of time to catch up on what we've never been able to do, from reading books to watching Netflix and everything else. And the best part is the commute and the waiting in the court has come down so drastically that we are all able to utilize our resources in a much more productive manner. I guess the post-COVID has taught at least the legal profession that it's not always in the courts and the corridors that you got to be, but you can also be more productive by being at home or in the office and still kind of catering to your clients. So yeah, personally for me, I think COVID has taught the legal profession a lot, and there's a lot more to look forward to.
So that's today's conversation with Mr. Pawan, corporate lawyer, I think philosopher in the present scenario, a shoulder to cry on more than anything else. And thank you for speaking to us. And definitely, it was a pleasure understanding various facets of the business in the post-COVID scenario. Thank you.
Thank you for having me over.